the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. Let's talk about this Democrat Autopsey. It's been out for a little bit. Came out in May of 2026. And I don't make any allusions to my distrust and hatred for typical consultants, even though a lot of people would call me one. I do a lot of consulting. But I'm not a fan of the consulting profession. I think most of the time people who choose to do that for a living are people who can't make it in the real world, and they offer themselves up as kind of magicians who have something that people want to buy. Secret knowledge they think will help them in some way, so they hire a consultant to tell them things they probably already know themselves, but lack the ability to articulate it. And that's what's going on in this Democrat autopsy of the 2024 election, where they gave an analysis. It was hilarious, actually. That anybody would pay for this kind of thing, and that they would publish it without cracking up laughing as they did so. Essentially, the autopsy of 2024 says that the reason that Democrats lost is that they lost working class voters, rural voters, non-college voters, and young men in some minority groups. The big takeaway was the party lost connection with parts of its traditional base. You don't say. You don't think they're going out and saying, "Hey, we're communists. We're major socialists," which I've said they were for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. You don't think that was going to have an impact on driving people away? What are you bringing people to? They took essentially for granted their voter base. They had been for years. They believed in the whole communist platform. Same thing they try to do in East Berlin, where they built the Berlin Wall and said, "Hey, we're going to contain you. You can't leave. You have to stay put. By force of government, we're going to make you stay on this side of the wall, and you're not going to be able, with free choice, go anywhere." So it's interesting, this whole thing. And I heard Glenn Beck the other day went into this long diatribe talking about the disclosure film, that we're losing free choice in our society. Algorithms can tell you everything you need to know. Your smartphone is spying on you for everything, and it knows more about you than you know about yourself, and that the algorithms of the world are being steered in your direction to give you what you want at all times. So how do you know that you've chosen anything when everything is being microprocessed information-wise towards your personal likings, because your smartphone knows so much about you? How do you know that's not the case? And that's what we're dealing with here with Democrats taking it for granted that people were going to vote for their people because they were women, or because they were people of color, or because they were people that came from a sexual lifestyle indicator, and that meant that they were going to all of a sudden, people would be motivated to go out and vote for them. Anybody that have a brain could have told them that wasn't going to be the case. And yet, I think there's no more scandalous group of people out there than political consultants. I've heard them many times. I am considered to be one, and my track record is very good. Could I charge a lot of money for my services? If I wanted to be as unethical as they are, I could, for certain. I don't, because I like to apply what I do for what I consider to be the righteous escapades of politics. So you can sell that information to somebody willing to write you a check, and there's a lot of people in politics ready to write a check if they think it's going to get them a benefit in an election, because it's a very demeaning process to go through the election process. You really open yourself up, and everybody's a critic, and then it's very tempting to say, "Hey, consultant, tell me what I'm doing what I should be doing so I can blame you later if something goes wrong. This autopsy of the 2024 election is hilarious in that they cited everything but what was the problem. The problem was you went with Kamala Harris. She didn't do very well in the primary. She was propped up. Why did you think she was going to do well in the general? Took your voters for granted, thinking they were going to show up and vote because she had a D next to her name, because she was a woman, because she was a woman of color. She slept her way to the top, and people don't respect that. And that's how she ended up there. And the Democrat Party plopped her in, just as they did with Hillary years before. You thought people were going to be excited about an imposed pick, not something they had any part of the process. One thing you do when you're doing team building is you try to get other people to buy into whatever the idea is. You want them to feel autonomy for the idea, make them feel part of that process. That's the way you build teams. And when you have a Democrat Party who rigs the rules, rigs the debates, as the Democrats have been caught doing, and then you start taking people out like Joe Biden and putting people in like Kamala Harris, people who weren't very good to begin with, and then you don't really have very good people ready to go. Your best people are people like Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez, open socialists, communists who are out there advocating for the overthrow of the United States capitalist system, which benefits a lot of people. Even poor people have upward mobility because of the capitalist system in the United States. They can go to Aldi and get groceries for a reasonable price. You can go to the dollar store and pretty much buy anything. Because of capitalism, because of the free flow of money, there are lots of market sectors, divisions among them. Forget about the classifications of what the association with those are. Do people have access to paper towels and toilet paper and chicken nuggets? Yes. Even poor people. And they have a higher quality of life than anybody else in the world. And they know that. And when Democrats get caught lying to them and trying to victimize them, they see through it. And then when you take away all their options and say, you're going to vote for these people, we pick these, take these guys, they're not going to be very excited. So they're not going to show up and vote. And they're kind of doing that now, trying to steer a political agenda, a woke political agenda into their candidates. And then you end up with these crazy lunatics like Kamala Harris, who wasn't good to begin with, and she wasn't good in the end, and she wasn't a good pick to replace Biden. Biden wasn't good to put in place because everybody thought that was the smart money. The consultant said, hey, he's attached to Obama. People will vote for him. Why was Obama so popular? I'll ask Bill Ayers. The whole political campaign started in the living room of a known domestic terrorist in the United States, of the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers, and his wife, Bernadine Dorn, both professors at Chicago University. Chicago was a birthplace of massive corruption, known for its ties to the mafia. And Saul Alinsky, attached to the mob, wrote the Democrat playbook, and they played all these psychological games for years. And I can tell you what that. I don't even have to. You don't have to pay me for it. I can tell you when it comes to that autopsy what the problem was. People got tired of being lied to, and the tricks didn't work anymore. It wasn't about working class. Yeah, they lost those rural voters and those working class voters because they stepped away from them. Trump stepped into them. Trump picked them up because he had a better message, and he went out there and spoke it, and he gave people the feeling of free choice in these matters in the election process. So you had a lot of Democrats that switched over and became Republicans. That's what the any kind of consultant should be telling the Democrat Party. They got beat. You don't see people converting from Republicans to go to Democrats. That's not happening. It doesn't happen at any level. It's happening where Democrats are converting over. Look at Fetterman. I wasn't a Fetterman fan at all. But he saw how things were in Pennsylvania and where the direction of the country was going, and he adjusted. So he's becoming a Republican-like from being an openly socialist as he was running for that one of the Senate seats in Pennsylvania. Remember when he had his stroke and a lot of people were anti-Fetterman. He had a lot of tendencies like Bernie Sanders, and people were putting the alarms out. And then he all of a sudden started showing some sense. He seems to be the only one who's listened to the picks of the people at these elections. He's making adjustments accordingly, and the rest of the Democrat Party should be too. But the consultants should be easy to identify that. They should have put that in their any kind of report. Should have said, hey, Kamala Harris was a horrible pick. I mean, the fact that they're even going in her direction for 2028 tells you everything you need to know about them. People like Gavin Newsom, he's the best they have. Come on, give me a break. He's Mr. COVID. I saw some of the stuff that they're doing with Amy Acton in Ohio, and they've got Bruce Springsteen coming in and doing these concert kind of venues and putting her in so they take pictures of her of these big arenas where they're really offering these free music festivals to buy Democrat votes. It didn't work for Obama. Obama didn't pick up any real extra votes when Bruce Springsteen did things, and John Bon Jovi was doing free concerts. It didn't translate into actual more millions of votes. Trump could fill an arena just to hear him talk. You don't need a musical quartet to come in and do a couple songs for free to fill an arena. And that's what they're doing with Amy Acton in Ohio, because they know she don't have the real numbers. The numbers aren't there. All the Democrat consultants don't have a clue. The political consultants on all sides are completely lost. I've heard them talk. They're just like business consultants. They hit the bullet points. It's in the latest business manual out of Harvard. They copy and paste the cliches and expect to sell themselves as advocates for success. And they always get it wrong. And they certainly got it wrong with this report, this autopsy. The reason why Democrats lost in 2024 is they didn't have a good platform. They didn't just lose their base. They took it for granted. Didn't listen to the autonomy of what voters were saying. They would have done better to be more like Fetterman instead of trying to impose these woke candidates on people and then force feed them by saying they got a D next to their name, you got to pay for them because we gave you a bunch of free stuff. They took that for granted. Total bad business strategy, political strategy, completely ridiculous. And then they came up with this report to say that not to address Kamala Harris being a disastrous candidate, or that the party has moved more towards socialism and mainstream Americans like capitalism. The Democrats have aligned themselves with the party of globalism, and that doesn't make people feel good. It's not a flag-flying party. It's an anti-American party, and people don't like it. And that's what people think of when they think of a Democrat. They think of a crazy lunatic out there advocating for socialism, someone like Ocasio-Cortez. They think of the lockdown people, like Gavin Newsom was, and Amy Acton certainly was. They think of people who want to run your life and take money and pay for big government services that doesn't benefit anybody. And then they run these candidates like Kamala Harris, and no one's excited about them. People aren't going to go out and run and vote for them because they're women or because they're people of color. People really don't care about those things. Those are things that consultants cared about. And the consultants turn out to be wrong time and time again, over and over and over and over and over. And working in that field a little bit myself, I can tell you how easy it is to get it right. I can tell you how easy it is to get it wrong. And most of the people working in those fields get it wrong because they don't know themselves. And they're in those fields because they want to perform the con job, and the people hiring them know less than they do. So it's easy to manipulate other people into thinking you're somebody you're not, when the people that are hiring you don't know much to begin with. And those who took Biden out of office, put Kamala Harris in, I told everybody as soon as it happened, the reason they did that was because they knew they got caught cheating in the 2020 election. They could not have a head-to-head matchup because it was going to reveal all the cheating that went on. You could not put Biden up against Trump again, where Trump was going to beat him, because everybody knew the inner. I saw precinct polling results from the actual election, precinct for precinct, a map after the 2020 election, so you could see clearly where the cheating occurred. Everybody knew Even these courts that did not want to take these cases up, they all knew where the cheating was, and it was because of overflow of ballots through mail-ins that were not properly managed under COVID protocols. It allowed for massive amounts of cheating. You could see it in the precinct numbers. You could see where the spikes were that were statistical anomalies that did not match up to the patterns of the nation in general. And they knew that. Democrats knew what they did, and they knew the 2024 election was going to kill them because that result was going to come out. They wanted someone to take the blame game. That's what's the real issue here with this autopsy. Democrats knew they cheated, and they wanted a blame game person. They could blame Kamala Harris for not running a good campaign. They could blame her because they gave it to her with a short ramp, not enough time to prepare for campaigning. You heard all the excuses. Oh, I didn't have enough time. I didn't know Joe was coming out. Yeah, you did. Everybody knew. They did that early debate with Trump because they wanted to test the market, and the consultants were like, oh my gosh, this is going to be bad. You heard Jill Biden said that she thought her husband had a stroke during the campaign. No, it was because he was getting destroyed by the superior candidate in Trump. And he was doing such a good job in the debate. There was no Democrat answer to stick to the Democrat playbook because the Democrats had lost everything. And you put a guy like Joe in that scenario with not a good message, not a good Democrat platform, and say, hey, go sell it. Sell what? What am I selling? I don't know what I'm selling. I don't know what a Democrat is anymore. They're socialists. We're trying not to say that out loud. That was too big of a step for Joe, and they knew that that people had voted for Trump the first time. That's what the January 6th issue was all about. People were angry that the election had been stolen from them, and they were being given Joe Biden when they didn't want him. The government took away free choice, just as is happening right now when you look at algorithms and how your phone digests your information and sells it to the information you're getting. How do you know anything is your opinion anymore? That's the big question. And that's the same thing in political consulting. Political consultants are hired to steer a candidate towards where the sentiment of the public is. And this autopsy was about as far away from that critical understanding as you can get. They hit all the wrong things and said the wrong stuff. And the real smoke coming off the fire that nobody wants to talk about, the elephant in the room on that whole analysis of why Democrats lost 2024 is because they knew Joe couldn't go head to head with Trump in another election because it was going to reveal, well, how do you have that 80 million votes in 2020 and he only had the low 70s in 2024? Why was that? Because there was a massive amount of election fraud. And they couldn't do the mail-in ballots under the loose COVID rules. And there was a little bit of an election crackdown, and the Democrats couldn't cheat, and they couldn't get their numbers. So anyone was going to lose. It didn't matter if it was going to be Barack Obama. Barack Obama would have lost. Everybody was going to lose. Democrats haven't answered their own problem because they got caught in election fraud, and they can't answer it with reports like this made by political consultants who are trying to sell a phony message. Democrats have aligned themselves to all the wrong things, and that's why they lost. That's why they have to rely on election fraud in order to hold any office whatsoever. And that's the reason they lost 2024. And it's what these political consultants can't say or won't say or don't want to say. But that's the case. It didn't matter if it's Kamala Harris. It doesn't matter if it's Gavin Newsom. It doesn't matter if it's John Fetterman. Everybody who's a Democrat's going to lose because Trump has a better message. The Republican Party is one that represents most people out there, most voters under free will. And while free will still exists, people are going to vote for what's in their self-interest. And the Republicans have presented themselves to represent that. Democrats have shown themselves to be villains of it. That's why they're losing. That's why they have to have election fraud to win anything. And Kamala Harris was an excuse, not a solution. And they put her out there on a short ramp to give themselves a cover story for the election fraud they know they did in 2020 because 2024 was going to reveal it. And they had to find a way to hide it, even if it cost them an election. There, I gave it to you for free. Somebody write me a big check. I gave you a lot of free money, a lot of free information there, and it's all true. And that's the elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about, but that's the essence of why Democrats lost in 2024. You want to write a report and hire a bunch of loser political consultants to write a phony autopsy of why they lost the election, and people will actually put it out there as if it was like had merit, and it had no merit whatsoever. That wasn't why Democrats lost. They lost because they picked the wrong kinds of people. They had the wrong kind of message, and they ignored the will of the people and why people get up off their chairs and go vote for them, because they put too much investment in election fraud, as other countries have done in controlled elections, like they have in China, like they have in Russia, like they've had in Venezuela for years, in Cuba. They don't have free elections in those places. They rigged the elections, and they've tried to do that here in the United States, which violates every kind of measure of free speech you could possibly try to garner. And then political consultants get hired to know what that lie and cheat is, and try and put fluffy words to it so people can believe that it's actually representative of the voter sentiment, when it has nothing to do with it. And this thing that they put out, this autopsy, is completely a phony report. And they knew it when they wrote it, because everybody knows what those precinct votes were, what the percentages were, what the performance in each one of those precincts was. They knew it ahead of time. And these people perpetuated a lie knowingly. And they did it for the big check, because people wanted a clean conscience, and they're willing to write big checks to people who can put words on paper to sell a lie. And that's exactly what the Kamala Harris thing was all about. Sell the lie of election fraud in 2020 by not having results that would verify it to the public consciousness in 2024. So they had to manipulate the outcome, which is what Kamala Harris was all about by removing Joe Biden. I've said that from the beginning, and I'm saying it now, and that's what's behind this autopsy. The Democrats lost because they got caught cheating, and they didn't have any good candidates because they didn't listen to what people wanted out there, and they gave people what they wanted, not what the public wanted. And so they're losing to Trump in voluminous ways. And it's going to continue to be the case, and I think the Democrat Party is over with, because they painted themselves too far to the left, and people in the United States are going to reject that time and time again. That's definitely going to be the talk after these midterms. And I can tell you that without anybody, without any six-figure consulting fee, which is the typical thing. I'll give it to you for free, because I want to see people, the right kind of people, win these things, and that's how I give my own political donations to righteousness and righteous causes. Is I give that information away to people who can do something with it without the fee, because then they don't have to go out and fundraise a lot of corrupt money to pay me to give it to them. I'll just give it to them because I want to see the right thing done. And anybody who's doing this political consulting for the Democrats, they know when they go into it that they're lying and cheating and stealing, and it's all a scam, and they just have to write up a bunch of words that give people the feeling of being not guilty on the election fraud of 2020, and they're going to get paid for giving people a way out of that dialogue, when that's actually the truth. And that's what nobody's telling you in any form of media, which they should have been doing all along. And that should have been the top ticket story on this election fraud case, on the autopsy of 2024 and why Democrats lost. They lost because he got caught cheating. And no, they couldn't cover the lie anymore with anybody. They couldn't push the buttons of, well, it's a woman. Kamala Harris is a woman, and she's a woman of color, so you got to vote for her. You got to break this glass ceiling that we told you is so important, which nobody out there really thinks is all that important. They just want someone to manage their lives well, and they want to go down to the store and get a pizza and watch TV and with their family and enjoy their life a little bit. They want a job that pays them a decent wage. They want to cut their grass. They want gas prices not to be too high so they can go visit their parents across town and not have to spend a lot of money for that tank of gas. And whatever political party gives people those basics is going to win. And right now, that's Republicans. And there's no sign of that changing anytime soon, because Democrats are way to the left. They've adopted open communism, socialism, which is not what Americans want. And there's a lot of people bleeding away from the Democrat Party and joining the Republican Party because of that reason. That's what should have been in their report. And if there were any consultants that were trying to give an honest report for the money that they're being paid for, they would say that. But they didn't say it, did they? They took the check and ran for the hills. They ran for their winter condo in Florida that's paid for by political consulting fees based on dumb people who have a guilty conscience, and no amount of money can clean it for them. But they hope so anyway. And there's always Democrat consultants like these losers who made this autopsy, who openly lie to everybody who should know better. They sell it in the media as if it was a document of some integrity, when it's completely pulled out of their you-know-what. And they lied to say everything they said in it, and they knowingly lied as they did it, just because they wanted to get the check for clean consciousness of people who knew they broke the rules, and put a lot of people in the House for an artificial 50-50 split, where they know very well that it's a Republican majority and always has been, because Democrats only won because they cheated. And the 2024 election was going to reveal that if they stuck with Joe Biden. So they dumped him. And they went with Kamala Harris and left the back door open for excuses. That's what it should have been in this report if they want to do a proper autopsy. I'd give you that for free, which I just did. That's the real story. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.
In the age of disclosure, you must understand the politics of heaven. Coming soon. Coming soon. The politics of heaven in 2027. A treasure hunt through heaven and all human history.